A manhunt continues after a group of suspects robbed a cash vehicle in Soweto. A group of about 5 men allegedly held security guards at gunpoint and robbed them. The robbers then fled with an undisclosed amount of money. Police are also searching for 8 possible suspects following another cash and transit heist at the Southdale shopping centre at the weekend. The experts have warned that authorities are losing the war on heists as robbers are far too advanced in executing these crimes. To unpack this story even further, joining us on Skype is a senior researcher at the Crime and Justice Program at the ISS, Dr. Johan Berger. Good evening to you and thank you for your time. Cash in transit heists are clearly part of a already sophisticated network, an underworld here which is well executed and well planned. What is your take on that?
Well, the sound on your side is terrible, but I think your question is, what do I make of the increase in cash in transit robberies and the type of approach these criminals use, the modus operandi, etc. And I think, you know, let's just look briefly at South Africa's crime problem over the last 5 years. We've seen an increase in most of our serious and violent crimes. Aggravated robbery as the overarching crime category has increased by 40% in the last 5 years, and cash in transit robberies is one of 7 of the subcategories of aggravated robbery. So robbery all have increased by more than 30%. Car hijackings increased by 77%. So cash in transit robberies increased over more or less the same period by more than 100%. So clearly the cash in transit robbery problem is the most serious at the moment. It's also more serious because of the type of violence applied by these criminals, as you mentioned. Highly trained individuals that form part of these teams, well organized, they select their targets well, and they plan well for the execution. They also select their members on the basis of their ability to use firearms and to face threats, whether it's from the police, private security, or wherever this possible threat may come from. So they have no hesitation in using violence and even in killing those who come in their way. And this they've demonstrated often enough for us to know that we need to take them seriously. So in order for us to deal with this, I think we will have to go back to the practices that worked in 2006, 2007, when cash in transit robberies was at its peak at that time, and when by working closely together, everybody in the various industries and the police, they did manage to bring it down to the low level of 139 by 2015.
I want us to explore what these robberies are really propelled by. Could a corrupt justice system have anything to do with it?
Oh, absolutely. I think if we look at some of the research that's available currently, and a particular study by Dr. Henny Lochner from UNISA is invaluable in this regard. He interviewed, as part of his research, 21 incarcerated cash and transit robbers in various prisons across Gauteng. And the one thing that comes out very, very clearly is that the criminal justice system itself, the weaknesses within the system in terms of corrupt individuals, as well as within the cash and transit system itself, allows these criminals to commit these crimes and to believe that they can do so and get away with it. You would have noticed, I think, that with these cash and transit robberies where they were caught on camera, they made no attempt at hiding their identity, which clearly shows that they have no fear that they will either be identified, or even if they're identified, that they will be traced, arrested, and prosecuted. From the study, it's clear that they are absolutely prepared to bribe their way by bribing police officials. And of course, they have an array of attorneys at their disposal who are fully aware of their activities, but absolutely prepared to defend them in court. So clearly the weaknesses in the criminal justice system is not only exploited by these criminals, but is actively allowing them to commit these crimes and get away with it.
And where does this leave police in terms of having a full breakdown or perhaps a strategy at curbing these crimes? Because we cannot assume that it's every police officer that is accepting these bribes and fueling these terrible, terrible crimes.
No, absolutely. I think most dedicated and honest police officers are as angry about some of their colleagues who are involved in these crimes, even more angry than we are, because it embarrasses them, it shames them, and it also creates a situation where they are also labeled generally as corrupt and criminal. So I think, we have to take out off our hats for those dedicated police officers who actually, at the risk of their own lives, go after these criminals and catch them, knowing how dangerous they are. And we've seen this, for example, in the Boksburg incident, where police pursued these criminals, cornered them, and arrested them in absolutely death-defying conditions. I think what is required here is a full investigation, not just of the police. I want to emphasize the fact that although there are police officers either actively or passively involved in aiding these criminals, and also other officers of our courts, such as magistrates and prosecutors, and certainly that does not mean all of them, but there are some of them. They need to be identified and they need to be removed from the system. There are clear recommendations in the National Development Plan about how we should, the police department should go about addressing these problems. And these were approved already in 2012. We are in 2018 and we haven't seen any real implementation of those excellent recommendations that would greatly assist the police in turning the problems or the organization around and away from the current problems it faces.
And who needs to be held accountable for ensuring the execution takes place?
Well, I think it starts with the Minister of Police, and I think we accept the fact that he's newly appointed and he's got his hands full with all that is happening. The high crime levels, political violence in areas such as KwaZulu-Natal that he's got to deal with, the spate of violence in terms of cash in transit. Everywhere we go, our crime situation is serious, and he's faced with all of these immediate problems that needs immediate attention. But as soon as he possibly can, he will have to sit down with the top management of the police and look at these recommendations. These recommendations are also included now in the white paper on policing, the 2015 or 2016 white paper. So it's high time now, I think, that police management, under the guidance of the Minister of Police, sit down and devise an implementation plan to make certain that the things that are recommended both in the National Development Plan and now in the white paper are implemented. That would go a long way in assisting the police at fixing the problems they currently experience.
And we know that the problem is rather an urgent matter that needs to be addressed with the most urgent of speed. We know that it's the 10th cash and transit heist in a space of just 17 days. In terms of the level of sophistication in the technology and the gadgets the South African Police Service has, is it adequate in fighting this war?
I'm not certain I got the full question there. The sound really is terrible.
Just on the level of sophistication, on the gadgets and the tools and the technology the South African Police Service has to curb these crimes.
I think they have the technology. They certainly still have expertise. We know that they have problems with the crime intelligence division. There's also been changes there recently, very positive changes. We have a new head of crime intelligence, but his is an enormous task to rebuild the crime intelligence division, to fix those problems, and to recapacitate that division. Because without crime intelligence and the technology at its disposal, the police will always find it difficult to deal with these kinds of criminals. But even more importantly, we've seen in 2006 when we also had this peak in terms of cash and transit robberies, even at a higher level than we are currently facing, that the police, the cash and transit industry, and the South African Banking Risk Information Center, SABRIC, all of the role players in this, in terms of the cash management in South Africa, were forced to work together, and they were able to pool their resources, both in terms of technology and information, as well as training. And by doing that, they were able to bring this type of crime down at an impressive rate over the next couple of years, until its lowest level just about 3 or 4 years ago, when it reached about 139, coming down from 467. So the technology is there, the capability, capacity, I think, is still there. What needs to happen now is that we revisit what worked in 2006 and do the same thing, and if possible, improve on that.
And thank you so much for your time, Dr. Johan Burger from the ISS, Senior Researcher, Crime and Justice Program. They're bringing us up to speed and analysing the peak in cash in transit heists in Gauteng, saying that more mechanisms need to be put in place, perhaps also recommending that an investigation, a thorough investigation, take place, which would include police officers and some court officials.